Today, I want to talk about a concept that is very key to the understanding of NVC and what its core is. And this is the concept of powering with versus powering over. Now, let's take a step back and define what power is. When we read the dictionary, there's definitions such as strength, it's the first one that comes up. Another one is to have the ability to control people or events. Now, for NVC, it means, for me at least, for my understanding of NVC, it means that power is the capacity, the ability to mobilize resources in a way, to have resources, have that access to resources, and move them about, mobilize them, use them in a way, hopefully to benefit people, but to make change in people and events, to have influence. Yeah. Now, for instance, when you think about an adult versus a child, it's quite easy to see that the adult, by the nature of being an adult, has more power, both physically bigger. Also, they probably have much more emotional control and has access to resources. An adult can hop in a car and go get food, or they can run whatever distance is needed, or they have access to money. In this regard, we see that the child, in this case, is on a level of much less power than the adult. Now, the invitation of NVC is to enter into relationships in a way that we can share power, that we can power with people, that we can enter into a partnership where everybody's needs matter and where a solution is found that meets everybody's needs. And this has very specific consequences in how we act. For instance, in the case of a parent-child relationship, it could mean that force is used very, very seldom, only in the cases where it is absolutely necessary and only to protect from harm and to protect from any danger, for instance. So let's take a look at some actions we might take, when we're coming from a paradigm of powering over, which, by the way, is everywhere in our culture. We're part of a culture that has hierarchical systems where the people on the top have much more power than the people on the bottom. And there's many implications to this, let alone people who have much more privilege than others that afford them a lot more power in our world. So it's quite complex, but to simplify it a bit, when we're coming from a paradigm of powering over, what might we do? Well, usually we would use strategies to coerce somebody or to maybe enforce a rule, or if we're a boss, we might absolutely make it mandatory that whatever we say is done. Now, we also have known bosses and people who take a much more gentle approach, a much more collaborative approach maybe to being a boss. And to, even in a hierarchical structure, those people are more prone to being in dialogue, to making requests, not so much demands, to actually engage people's willingness in taking an action, and to really respect one of those basic needs of human beings, which is freedom and our capacity and ability to choose freely from our own inner willingness. So this second model is what NVC proposes, to share power, to power with people, as opposed to using our power to enforce what we want on them or to enforce rules on them. Now, what this is gonna mobilize in people is really for them to have intrinsic motivation. They're gonna have some inner willingness, some inner desire to do something, because they're gonna be very in touch with what needs their action meets, both for themselves and for other people, as opposed to when power is used over people, it tends to create a lot of resistance, at the very least, if not hostility at times. And people usually act from an external motivation, not something within them, but because they're afraid of consequences or how their lack of action, if they don't align, how that will affect their life in a negative way. Now, as you can see, there's two very different assumptions here. In the power over paradigm, which is typical of the domination culture. Marshall Rosenberg called our culture the domination paradigm. In a way, the assumption is that certain people's needs matter more. Now, this is quite a strong statement, but if you think about it, when you're in a hierarchical system at work, for instance, your boss's needs are given high priority than the people under the boss, usually. Or even being a parent, this can be very painful to realize that when you're using power over your child, you're making your own needs and desires matter more than theirs. And at times they may show you with a tantrum or with some upset, and other times they adapt because they have some other needs that they're trying to meet, like belonging or like being cared for, that are more important than the momentary dispute, maybe over whatever you're trying to enforce. I have a lot of compassion for parents on this. I myself haven't been a parent. It's a constant work that it takes to walk on this path towards powering with and to really partner with children and in all other areas of our life. Now, the assumption for this powering with paradigm is that everybody's needs matter equally. So it brings a smile to my face thinking, the child's needs are just as important as the parents'. No more, no less. All of them can be met at once. So that's the second assumption, that everybody's needs can be met. Maybe not in that moment, in that specific way, but that we can enter into a dialogue to meet the most needs possible in the best possible way for everybody. And even children are quite capable of entering into this dialogue and to be in relationship with us that are in partnership as opposed to being powered over. Or sometimes, even in our modern way to parents, some parents, I've definitely done this. I forgot my needs and I maybe let the children's needs matter more than mine. That's also not the solution. That doesn't bring a very balanced equilibrium, definitely not long term. Now, these two paradigms are also coming, they have different beliefs. Some people believe they have to use power over to bring effectiveness to a situation or because it's easier. Whereas I have come to believe that any effort you put in to power with, in the end pays off, and the benefits are so big. It's a much more connecting way of being in the world, of being in relationship. There's, in my opinion, in my experience, power struggles disappear if you're in a child relationship, because there's almost nothing to rebel against, because when your needs are being listened to, even if you don't know how to meet them, but at least you enter into that land of togetherness and partnership, and there's trust that everybody's needs are going to matter. So the power struggles and the tantrums literally disappear, both when children are little and they're meant to be going through those terrible 2s or terrible 3s at times. They don't, in my experience, that doesn't happen, because as soon as they complain, they're telling you, hey, my need is not being met. I can see that. Let's figure out a way in which we can make it work better for you and for me and for everybody involved. Also, when they're teenagers, I'm seeing that if they don't have anything to rebel against, they go through the teenage years in a very different way than what we expect of them. It's very, very fulfilling and sweet to see. Of course, I believe that when we power with people, we foster that everybody's in touch with themselves more and also in touch with other people. We foster relationships of interdependence that are very healthy to being in society, in my experience. So I invite you to be moving towards powering with and find ways in which you're maybe still powering over? This is a constant practice that I do. What are the subtle ways in which I'm still either using my power, my greater power, to be enforcing in my opinion, my ideas, my strategies? Or am I actually taking power away from somebody who has power? This is, for me, very poignant with little children. You know, babies are born into the world already with power. You know, they have the talk about mobilizing people and by screaming, you know, and in our cultures, we don't usually recognize this, and we don't know how to foster it and how to respect it. And I'm inviting you to really pay attention to become the guardian of people's power, especially children, and especially those that are underprivileged in some way, to really find the power that they do have, foster it, respect it, and to share your power. If you're a person in great power, the best that you can do for the world is to power with people, to not, which doesn't mean to ignore your power. It means to find a new way so that everybody's needs matter, everybody's opinion matters, and a new way forward.